everybody to the Steam Screamfest Town Hall for the Bornless. My name is Jake, and I'm today joined by my esteemed colleague from across the pond, Brandon Lansdale, head of game. How are you doing, sir? Okay, run that by them again, because the audio wasn't working for you. Now it should be. Oh, no, it's not. Hang on, hang on. Hang on, sir, hang on. Right, let's try that again. Say something.
Yes.
There we go. He's live. Now we've got to think of something extra special to say. Oh no, is he frozen, chat? Oh no. We've been having some technical difficulties before we went live trying to get his camera working. Oh, he's back!
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good, we're good.
RTC disconnecting in Discord.
Classic Discord. Classic. Anyway, let's run that back. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing wonderful on this Sunday morning. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. We've had a playtest live this weekend. We've got what, 4 more hours, I think, to go. If I did my math right,
It's not enough hours.
I'm bad at math.
Not enough hours, Jake.
Well, good news for everybody that agrees with you, because those above dates that you're seeing above our beautiful heads, October 29th to November 3rd, there's a freely accessible demo available to everybody via Steam. Go there, download it, no keys required. Anybody can go and download it and have a great time. And today, we're going to be talking about some of the things that you'll maybe see in that build of the demo, but also some stuff that's upcoming to the game as well that isn't going to be in that demo, but will be in the game soon. So, go and check it out, wishlist Bornless on Steam, get ready to download the demo, and let's get into it. Let's just talk about some of the cool stuff we've been cooking up. So, first of all,
let's talk.
Let's chat. First off, we have look at. We've got a motorbike, which we've talked about before in a previous town hall, and a hippie van, which you can see on the screen right now. So we've got some additional vehicles now to join the likes of the truck that's been in the game for a while. What different gameplay roles do you see these two filling up?
That is a great question. We'll start with the motorbike, the motorcycle, the good old Harley Davidson. That one, as most gamers could probably tell just from looking at it, is going to be more agile. It's going to be faster. It's going to turn quicker. But it will be at the cost of your safety, like motorcycles in real life. So you'll be obviously more exposed, easier target to hit, whereas if you're in something like the truck, you're in the truck cabin, you're kind of surrounded by other parts of the truck that can protect you. The hippie van, on the other hand, will be the most defense heavy. Whenever you're on the back of the truck, whenever you're not driving, someone just hops in the bed, they're still exposed, but it allows them to ride with the van or with the truck. The hippie van will be everybody that's in it can be protected. It'll have more health. It'll allow it'll last you longer, but at the potential cost of speed.
Yeah, and it'll be a righteous old time when everybody's in there for sure.
Right.
How will these vehicles change the way that players move around Farmouth? Like, you mentioned that there's a sort of defensibility aspect to it, but what's the sort of trade-off for players to choose one of these vehicles versus the existing truck?
Well, the first step is obviously going to be availability on the map. We have our garages where you get trucks. The motorbikes might be only spawning in more secluded areas of the map, or maybe only a couple of POIs where you can find them. Whereas the trucks are available at every cabin and every corner of Farmouth Island. And same thing with the hippie van. It might be something that's a little harder to find, or there might be only one spawn on the map. There's a couple of hippie camps around the island. For those of you that have been exploring, you'll know where those are. That might be where you find the hippie van itself. So it'll definitely be based on preferred play style, and then on top of that availability on the map itself.
Sure thing. We've got to find the rare hippie van, guys. Um, what's the biggest challenge in balancing vehicles for a horror game? How do you make them feel useful without letting players just like bypass the tension and the horror elements of the game?
That's a tough one because you hit the nail on the head with the primary problem there is in horror games there's a lot of things that make a horror game. There's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of gameplay elements that really are the core pillar, the foundation of a horror game, and a lot of it revolves around taking away or reducing availability or senses of players, whether, for example, sight, reducing or limiting player sight. They have to use a flashlight and it's more tense. Going into a dark room is scarier, or sound. Sometimes it's increasing sound or reducing the noises around them so that they're focused on that. So a lot of horror games focus on reducing or increasing player senses, and the vehicles allow players to escape. It gives players advantages. It gives players more things. So it's definitely tougher. So the balance with that is, they need something to get away from now. There needs to be a point behind this and a reason why you would be scared enough or in a situation where you would need to use one of these vehicles. And we are working on that, obviously, alongside this with all of our new AI, which I know we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, and the other thing that I find really interesting about the vehicles is it's a map design question as well, right? Like one of the things that is forcing the players to get back into the horror elements, even if you are in a vehicle, is that you have to sort of get out of them to go into some of the POIs and experience some of the main features of the game loop. So
Exactly.
maybe you
Exactly.
could sit in a van the entire match, but you're not really going to accomplish much. You've got to get out there and get scared at some point.
Need that
Couple of
loot.
yeah,
Need that loot.
exactly. You gotta be out, not in the car to pick up loot. That's a very big point. There's a couple of questions in the chat about the vehicles as well. One thing to mention is that if you have any questions about things that aren't what we're covering right now, put them in the chat because we are going to do a little Q&A at the end with some of the questions. We've got some from our Discord already. But if you've got any other questions, drop them in the chat and I'll try and spot them and grab them out so that we can answer those at the end. But a few about these vehicles. Moonrain says, will the motorbike be able to seat two people? Which I think is interesting. Will there be an extra seat on the back for somebody to hold on?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I don't see a whole lot of reason why there wouldn't be, other than um, scarcity of resources. But the whole game at the moment is about duos. That's the whole experience, is going to Farmouth Island with a duo, completing the loop and trying to extract together. All of our characters have duos in their own lore. For example, Harry and Denzel, Sarah and Milton. So it fits the theme and the motto of the Bornless to have it be a two-seater. So you can probably expect that.
Yeah. And another thing I saw from Mystic Magic Man in the chat, he said something about flipping off the ramps with the motorbike. We've got to get that in. We've got to find a way to make sure you can do a backflip in these bad boys, like Evil Knievel.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So the next topic, puzzles. So we're not gonna show too much about these. I've made sure that the footage doesn't give away any of the solutions or anything like that. It just sort of shows what they might look like. So without spoiling what these puzzles are and how to solve them, can you give us a little bit of a sense about what they are? Are they little environmental riddles for extra loot, or are they sort of more like complex multi-stage things?
Yeah, so you can expect a good spread of everything. Obviously, with the development of a game, this does take time to get there. So at the moment, without spoiling anything, there are a handful of existing puzzles to complete that have each of their own rewards. They are spread out around the map, and I think only maybe a handful of people even including it in the studio as well, actually know where all of the puzzles are and how to complete them. So that is kind of part of the mysteries. We intentionally try and keep some of the puzzles as hidden as possible. Obviously, as we develop, it goes across multiple people, so multiple people have to be informed. But the less people that know, the I think the more exciting it is going to be when the community figure these things out. I know we have a thread in the Discord about lore hunting and Easter egg hunting, and those guys discovered the Morse code stuff that's in the game, and they're in the works of trying to figure that out at the moment right now.
Yeah, and for everybody in chat, I am one of the people that doesn't know. I know nothing. I'm too stupid to figure these out. I need help. Um, go into our Discord. There's some people that are already figuring these things out. Their brains are much bigger than mine. Much deeper wrinkles on those bad boys. Mine's smooth in comparison. From a design perspective, how do you create a good puzzle for a PvPvE game? Because it has to be solvable under pressure, right? So how do you balance
Yeah,
making it challenging without being frustrating while dealing with everything else going on?
yeah. Well, not every puzzle is going to be the most optimal for every experience, if that makes sense. So, for example, um, there's a. I hope the video talks about the pressure plate puzzles because I'm going to talk about them.
It does
um,
show there now,
okay,
actually
cool.
right
So
now.
awesome, perfect. So, for example, the pressure plate puzzles. Um, if you needed 3 people for it, and the game is only duos, how do you facilitate that? Right? Whereas there are puzzles where you can complete it on your own in one area, and there are puzzles that take you all across Farmouth Island. So instead of focusing on making making 2 puzzles fit every scenario, we've made multiple puzzles that you kind of get to over time. You're not going to get into the match and be able to do every one at one time. And that is actually intentional. That is part of the design. Is you might be trying to complete a puzzle and a team rolls up on you, or you might be trying to complete a puzzle, but there's only 3 minutes left in the match and you need to extract. We want that sense of I need to play another one. I want to get back to the island. I want to complete that puzzle. With that being said, we don't want it to be frustrating for you to not complete puzzles, or to struggle to figure out how to complete them. So there's a good mix of simple puzzles, and there will be a mix, especially when it comes to the primary storyline and the quests that you'll start to explore in the game, that those do get harder over time, and it may take multiple runs in Farmouth to complete. But mixing that with several, single step, 2 step, 3 step puzzles that can be done in quick succession, kind of helps balance out that feeling of satisfaction versus kind of teasing you with the other puzzles.
Yeah, awesome. Next up, I was going to ask a question about puzzles requiring teamwork and stuff, but you kind of covered that. You're so efficient. All in one answer. Vaulting. This is something that some
Mhm.
of the people that have joined in on playtests this weekend and some private tests before that have experienced already. Huge quality of life update that lots of people are really happy about. How much freedom do you feel like this gives players when navigating the map?
I'll put it in I'll phrase this in a personal experience that I had playing the game yesterday. Uh if you have explored the map, you'll see that um there's a new addition on the map at Pips Bay, which always existed, that Pips Bay did. But there's the docks have been reworked down there, and the structures are now 3, 4, 5 stories tall. And you know, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, when you saw that, you would have stayed on the first floor, and that's pretty much it. But now, whenever you go onto the map. For example, like I was gonna say, last night when I was playing, I had my buddy. He went downstairs. I went to the top floor, and someone had summoned Oribus at the gate, and Oribus jumped all the way over to where I was at the docks. And I'm panicking at this point, right? I'm like, oh, Oribus jumped me. There's players on the other side of this building. I don't know what to do. And I started to run and I was going to jump off. And I thought for a second, kind of split second decision. I was like, if I jump off, they're going to follow me and there's nowhere to go down there. So instead of going down, I was able to use the vaulting to go up over two objects and get behind a big billboard so that they couldn't see me and Orbis couldn't get to me. It let me heal. It gave me time to communicate to my teammate what to do. He's able to flank. We did end up dying, but I survived longer than I would have if I hadn't vaulted. So
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. That dock area, I highly recommend everybody goes there because there's just so much verticality. It's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite areas now. Maybe a more technical question, but this clearly wasn't just a flip the switch kind of feature. Was there like some huge technical challenges in getting this to work smoothly across the entire map?
unfortunately, there were many. Um, Luckily, and this worked out very well in our favor, there wasn't an area of the map that broke when we added vaulting, which I was very wary of when we decided to take the step into doing vaulting. I was very concerned that there was going to be areas of the map that you weren't supposed to get to and you could end up doing so, or you'd get stuck somewhere. Obviously, there were a lot of programming challenges that came with this. The island has been getting very dense in terms of items and buildings and foliage. And, the more there is, the higher chance there is that you can get somewhere you're not supposed to, get stuck where, you shouldn't be getting stuck. And so we had to adjust the system a few different times, but nothing that made us have to rework the map, which was a big relief for us. But there was definitely some instances, and you will see if you play during the playtest. Obviously, it is a playtest. There will be bugs. You may see one or two from the vaulting system. It's a work in progress, but they are very, very few and far between, and they are not game breaking. Whenever it happens, they're actually more funny than anything. So that's a big plus.
So you kind of covered this already, actually, in your first story about the encounter you had, but vaulting will really change the dynamic of chases, right, between players, both for the person running and the person chasing them, with all the extra verticality and stuff like that. Do you feel like this is a massive change in how encounters were working versus before with the vaulting? Like the chases feel a lot more dynamic now, right?
They do, yeah. The chases are before. I don't think they were bad before by any means, but they were very linear. If you saw someone run around a corner, you knew exactly where they would be when you were chasing them, which isn't a bad thing. Obviously, it makes decision making in combat much more predictable, and you can plan better. However, that does mean that as a person who's trying to get away, when you go around a corner, the person knows where you went. So having the vaulting allows for you to mix things up, not only getting chased and being able to get away, but also when you're chasing someone, if you saw them go around a corner, you don't just have to follow them around the corner and get blasted by a shotgun. You can climb over the building. You can get up to the second floor and jump down on them. And this goes the same for the demons. And this was a big one. The demons, previously, if a demon jumped at you, that's it, right? He jumps on you, you get swiped, you're dead. And now this gives players an opportunity to get up and out of the way to places that demons not necessarily can't reach, but to places that's going to take them longer to get to. You can outmaneuver demons. And that is something that's an ongoing thing, is balancing that the combat and the flow between humans and demons, and vaulting has made that much easier. Obviously, you need some place to vault, so we still have to handle that kind of flow in areas where you can't vault. But downtown, Farmouth Town, Pips Bay, Belial's Manor, Zaganland. There's a lot more room for maneuvering around demons using the vaulting system.
Yeah, and it's a massive improvement for me personally too, because I feel like it really increases that skill ceiling, right? Like if you make sure that you're in an area where there is sort of the more complex geometry that you can vault over and around and all this stuff, then you're putting yourself in a more advantageous position, right? If a demon jumps on you, then you have outs and stuff like that, and it deepens the gameplay, which is really really great.
Exactly.
Next up to talk about the newest POI. We've talked about this briefly before, and this is actually outdated footage of it because I couldn't get new footage of it. But if you jump in this weekend or in the demo, you'll see a completely revamped radio tower. So it's gone through a couple of iterations, right? This is a much more simple version of the radio tower that we're showing here. It's a lot more complicated, a lot more nicely dressed now. But why did we feel like the radio tower needed to go through these iterations? Like, what have we iterated upon? What improvements have we made to it since this footage was captured?
Yeah, so it is. It's obviously still a work in progress, like many other things in the project. Without spoiling anything, the radio tower point of interest will be a focal point of the story in the future, and we want it to be something that is visually appealing to explore, as well as can facilitate and house important elements to the story and the quest lines that you'll be playing, and all the characters and how they're attached to Farmouth Island. Additionally, and this one was um, an important the primary reason that it did get visually updated, because even with the old look, the radio tower could still be a spot that was important for quests, but the optimization was a big one. Optimization has been something that we've been working on for a long time. It's a slow, monotonous, unfortunate process, but we want as many people to be able to experience the game as possible, and getting performance in check, making sure it runs on older hardware is important. And the assets that we were using at the time were from Quixel. So nice official assets, Unreal Engine verified, as you will. But they were not made for large scenes. They were made for intimate, close interior scenes, and having them in a map at the scale that we have ours meant that there were no resources left on your VRAM for anything else in that area. So that did come primarily from an optimization standpoint. We went from something like the size map of the area was something like 2 gigs to 300 megabytes. So we cut down a significant portion of the resources that were being used in that area, which means we can dress it with more things and add more stuff surrounding it, since we saved so many resources from that switch.
Yeah, and it's an area with a very specific atmosphere as well. It's very very dark, very covered in monsters. What was the atmosphere that we were really trying to create there at the radio tower?
Danger. It needed to feel important. It needed to feel like it was somewhere you shouldn't be, but that you really wanted to go. And previously in that area, we had obviously the spider caves. For those of you that have played or watched streams, you'll know what kind of goes on down there. Um, the spider caves added a lot. They were very thematic. They felt cool. Um, they were a little bit frustrating to navigate. What with the steepness of the landscape, the spiders in the dark. It was just something like when you went down in there, it was very difficult to get out. And we wanted to put a focus on that area, but not make it frustrating for players to be around. We wanted it to feel like an end game area, which I think it's pretty close to that now. Lots of monsters. There's a lot of loot laying around now, and for those of you that do um, tread the waters out there, you venture into that central area, you'll see a lot of tech pieces and a lot of new assets and visual set dressing in the area that is starting to tell a really important story that we haven't been able to tell before. And it is leading to something really, really cool.
Yeah. The lore implications are massive, ladies and gentlemen. The lore implications are massive. Speaking of the danger at Radio Tower and across the map, we've got some new NPC enemies that people can come across in the demo and the playtest this weekend. We're going to take a look at a couple of these now. First of all, the Watchers, the big eyes, the flying eyeballs that shoot lasers at people. Why were these enemies such an important decision? Important addition, sorry.
Yeah. That answer is twofold. I'll give the long answers here in a second because I do want to elaborate on them, but the short answers are enemy variety so that matches don't feel stale, and for lore. A lot of the decisions we're making and the stuff we're adding and the stuff we're changing, especially within the last 3 to 4 months, are primarily for lore reasons, to tell the story, to finally get those connections. But on the same hand, match variety, for those who don't care about the lore, the matches still need to be fun, right? And enemy variety has a massive hand in that. The Watchers themselves are they're still an early iteration. The vision we have in our heads for them are not so much floating targets in the sky as they are spotlights or beacons that you should be wary of. If you've played in the yesterday or today, and you are a person who likes playing a bit more sneaky or passive, you don't W key everywhere. The Watchers can be they can be a bit tricky because they give away your position. Obviously, they spot you and they start shooting at you. The noise is really loud. Anybody in the radius can see the direction the Watcher is looking and moving, and that gives away your position. So it makes especially the more sneaky or slower gameplay more tricky. Not difficult or frustrating, but it makes you more aware of where you're going, what you're doing. Whenever you're trying to sneak up on a team, you can't just go out in the open. You have to go from tree to tree, from building to building, and it really makes that slower gameplay feel more tense. So they have done a fantastic job there. And just the combat element of them is still a little too straightforward. Right now, you just shoot at them, and and they fall out of the sky. We actually and we had to take it out for this test, but we had a system on them where they shielded. So instead of being able to just shoot them whenever, they can actually put up shields themselves around them to protect them. So it means you have to time your shots or reposition to a place where you can shoot around the shields. They're obviously their critical hitbox is their big eye on the front. So the shield blocks that, meaning you can't get critical hits on them. So things like the pistol or like a lower tier Sten, it's harder to kill them because it takes more shots. So you want to wait till that shield comes down, and you have to work on your timing with that. So we want them to feel a little more nuanced and dynamic. Um, but it's just stuff that we work on over time.
Yep. Speaking of flying things, maybe these ones aren't quite as deadly, but definitely sneaky. The scouts, the little bat-like brains, they sound. The voice lines are great. If you haven't listened to, to the voice lines when you've been in game, you've been going too fast. Stop for a second and listen to their voice lines because they're very funny. How do you think they change the atmosphere of the map? You know, you've got these little brains flying around and making these funny comments. How does that change the atmosphere? Having to contend with these little annoying scouts.
Yeah, so um I have personally died to them a couple of times. I will say that. They've very low health and they're loud, so they don't really sneak up on you. But if you don't take care of them quickly, you can get overwhelmed very, very fast. I will say that. I've run into a situation a few times where I ignored them trying to run away because I was focused on like a spider or something. And I turn around and there's three of them in my face, and it's too late at that point. So they can be really tricky. I think they actually add on that note of enemy variety and changing up gameplay. I think they add an important element of target prioritization. Even though they are one shot, you can't just leave them, right? You can't just ignore them because they will catch you and they will overwhelm you quickly. They're loud, so they give away your position if they're chasing you. So kind of similar to the Watchers, if you're trying to be sneaky, you gotta be careful where you go. But yeah, target prioritization makes players think about their actions whenever they're going to shoot. If there's two enemies, which one do you shoot first? Because in a lot of scenarios, in a FPS game, what target you shoot first can potentially be the difference between losing or winning a gunfight. And so they add a little bit of urgency to combat whenever they're around, and I think they do a good job of that.
Yeah, tip for everybody that's looking for a way to deal with them easier: let your blade do the talking. The melee really sorts these guys out. In a really efficient way. Let the blade do the talking. And finally, the one that's on the screen at the moment, the stillborn, horrifying. Everyone who's played in some of the tests over the past month or so knows that this has added a much needed shot of horror into our gameplay. Everybody's scared of this damn thing. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the stillborns are in a gameplay sense and how players need to play around them?
Yeah. So the stillborns are they are, what's the word I'm looking for? They are there's a specific word I'm looking for. Um Not attention. They're there to check if players are paying attention. Um it, on the note of what I brought up earlier about core pillars and design of horror games and what makes a horror game, and the senses that a player has to use and what can be taken away, um, you want to keep players on their toes as often as possible, because if they get complacent, if they get into a kind of monotonous rhythm, the experience itself and be much poorer, but it also means that other things in the match or in the game don't carry as much weight. If a player's not really paying attention, a jump scare might not get them as much. Or if they're not paying attention, a sound off in the distance or something else, they start to disconnect from that experience. And the stillborns obviously for those of you that have played, you know what they do. If you haven't played, it's the classic like weeping angels, where if you look at them, they're frozen, but if you turn around, if no one's looking at them, they're fast and they get you. They run at you really quick. So it's one of those things where if you know a stillborn is around, if you hear it, which you will hear it, you know that you need to be on your toes. You can't take your eyes off from it too quick or for too long, because inevitably it will get you. Which means if you're looking at the stillborn, there could be a player behind you, or there could be a scout behind you coming up to shoot you. Um, so it is one of those things where it's there to keep players in check and to provide a kind of looming sense of danger as often as possible, and make it as dangerous as possible without outright killing the player, right? Even though it provides danger, you can just look at it and you can stop it and you can get out of range and you're fine. But it's always there in the back of your head. You know that stillborn is there, and you have to play around it accordingly. It's not something you can just ignore, and that pressure adds again to the experience where a player is now very attentive. They're very aware, and so a jump scare or a sound might add a little bit more to that horror experience.
Yeah, and I feel like it adds another layer of sort of to the skill ceiling of combat, right? If you, in the same way that if you make sure you're in an area where there's cover and vaulting opportunities and a lot of interesting movement to get away or get around people, in the same way you need to be aware of where these stillborns are, because if you get into a gunfight with one that's near you already, it's going to make the combat a lot more difficult for you. On the same token, if you know that there's one sort of where the enemies are, you can sort of play around that a little bit. You can make them, you can wait out the combat a little bit, let the stillborn get on them, annoy them, flush them out of their cover. It's a very interesting thing to play around. That said, though, like you said, they are invincible to conventional guns and ammo. It's been a little bit of a topic of conversation internally about how we balance this. Some people have absolutely love them. Some people say that not being able to kill them or it not being easy enough to kill them hampers gameplay a little bit. So I imagine that's a very hard one to figure out how to balance for the gameplay.
Yeah.
And I know for this test, a lot of players may have noticed this weekend is that they've been moved to the center of the map to sort of increase the danger sort of in that area. Care to comment about how we've been thinking about this balancing act for these guys?
Yes, I feel very strongly about this, Jake. I feel very, very strongly about this one. As a... When it comes to games, there is the player experience side, the consumer, the person who is experiencing, taking part in the game itself, and then there is the designer, the developer. I say it's the designer, specifically the designer. There's an experience that they're intending the player to have, and then there's an experience the player themselves are trying to have. And while some this is kind of a broad thing, this isn't specifically about the stillborns in general, this is just a broad thing. Sometimes a player will want to have a specific experience, but it doesn't align with what the designer had in mind. And this will happen often. As a kind of a high level example, in level design, you have two paths. One is the path the developer, the designer wants you to take, and the other path is the easy path, right? The players will always take the path of least resistance. That does not mean that it's the most fun path. It's the most convenient path, but it's not the most fun, or it detracts from an important element of the experience, or there might have been a painting on the wall that the designer wanted you to see that was important on the primary path, but the player takes a path of least resistance, which isn't a bad thing, right? It, at the end of the day, the player is the one who's playing and who needs to enjoy that experience. So there's definitely merit and weight to that. But to get the whole picture, sometimes you have to follow the path the designer lays out. And I think this stillborn element is really important to that, because if the stillborns were killable, you could just shoot them with your shotgun, or you could just shoot them in the head with the pistol. What makes them different to a cultist, right? You can look at them and they're frozen, they don't do anything, there's no threat, and you can shoot them. They, at that point, just take the stillborn out of the game, right? There's no reason they should be there if you can just kill them. You just replace the stillborn with the cultist that already exists in the game. They're there to provide a very specific experience that breaks up the monotony of just shooting cultists. Even though it's tough, or it might pull you away from the path you were trying to go down, right? You were trying to go down the path of least resistance and this pulls you away from that. It's important that they're there because it breaks up that gameplay. You know, if you played 30 matches and all you shot were cultists, that's going to get boring quickly. And so I think that having them invincible is a very core part of it's an important supporting pillar for many other facets of the game. I can understand, on that same hand, the frustration of getting stuck with the stillborn on you. You can't get rid of it because of XYZ circumstance, and then dying because of it. That's what feels bad, and we don't want that. So, with that being said, we did try a compromise where we kept them invincible to conventional weaponry, but moved them to the center of the map. So now when you're exploring Farmith, or you're going to, through the Amador farm, or you're at Ruthven Estate, you're not constantly under that pressure of a stillborn on your shoulder. But it means that we can keep that core experience of what the stillborns are supposed to be and just focus it around one area of the map. So when you go into that area, which is the center, you know what to expect. You know what you're getting into whenever you go in there. And if you needed to get away from a stillborn, you can exit the center of the map and you're out of that kind of danger zone. So I do think where they're at now is a little too far removed. But we definitely need that feedback from players who have played it before, to where it's at now, and see if they still feel the same about it. It will be something that we continue to adjust over time and work on and tweak, just to keep the experience fresh, and keep players interested, and make sure that the 100th match of Bornless is just as fun as the first.
Excellent. Great answer. The next one on my list of topics is one that I don't have a video for on purpose, and that is the cutscenes. I'm only teasing them. We're not going to tell too much about them. But being as vague as you can, Branson, what does introducing these cutscenes that people can find around the safe house mean for the future of the storytelling in the Bornless?
For the last 2.5 years, actually, since I joined the team back in 2022, yeah, February of 2022, since way back when, there's been this really, really awesome story that's been sitting under the surface, waiting to be tied into the game, waiting to be integrated, and there's a lot there. I know we always say that, whether it sounds cliche or overused, there's so much story there that we just haven't had an opportunity to share yet, or get into the player's hands in a way that feels immersive and feels exciting and interesting. And this is one of the biggest steps we've had to getting that into the player's hands. The turnaround time, from a development side of things, is phenomenal. It's quite, it's you do your voice acting, your recording, the cinematic stuff, the animating. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but the rate at which we're able to create these and get them into the game is really, really good. So it gives us not only an easy way to get the story into the game, but it gives us a very, very interactive way. The player feels like they're there, it feels like they're talking to the character, and it feels like um the world is alive, and they're interacting and reacting to it. Obviously, I don't want to give any specifics because
People got to find that out.
secrets.
People got to find
Yeah,
that
you
out by
got to
getting in
find that
there.
out. But it's I personally am very proud of where they're at, and I didn't even work on the system. So
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun. I went a long time without looking at any of the cutscenes because I just like didn't do it. I guess I was doing other very important work, of course. But when I did go through and I expanded the safe house and found all of the people you could speak to, it's very cool. The cutscenes are great. Some of them are funny. Some of them are just like awesome. Like, yeah, a lot of fun. I highly recommend everybody saves up their moolah in the demo and this weekend to buy some of them doors and get chatting to some of our characters. It's a lot of fun. Speaking of the safe house, though, this one we do have a video of. The building system. We've shown this off before, but if I'm not mistaken, this is the first demo that we're going to be doing where this is actually going to be accessible to people, and people will be able to start building some stuff. I don't think it was in Next Fest. If I'm wrong in that, then somebody correct me. But this is a big deal. It changes the loot. It changes everything really. Can you give us the sort of big picture overview of the building system, why we put it in the game, and stuff like that?
you trying to think of the best way to summarize this. Whenever you play the game, you are going from I don't want to spoil lore stuff, obviously, but you're going from the island back to your safe house and back and forth. Your safe house is supposed to feel like a reprieve from the dangers of Farmouth Island. We want it to feel like it's your island and that it is a place that you can call home in the game. And having the ability to customize it is a really good way to have a player feel an attachment to something. And the way we've integrated it, where you have to go into the match and extract with the loot that you turn into the scrap, you use the scrap to build, means that every item you place has meaning. That was a hard fought battle. Every wall you place down, you earned that wall. And building out these buildings and settlements and fortifications with stuff that you fought for makes it a little more, you can appreciate it more. And it also means that it gives you a reason to go into the match, or it gives you a reason to do something out of the match. It kind of ties your safe house to the island and the primary game mode itself. And that's a important element for us, is making sure that all the experiences feel like they're tied to another, and that there's not just a random feature just to have a random feature, right? I've mentioned this before. I've spoken about this before in other town halls or Mythos creator meetings or whatever. Is there's 1,001 fantastic game features that exist. But it doesn't mean that every feature is right for your game. If you're developing a game, and it's important that you pick the right ones and that there is a reason for them. And with the building system, I think we've done a really good job of making that connection and making it something that you're excited to come back to whenever you get out of a match, and you're excited to get into a match into a match 4 because you're gonna go get more items for your safe house or more scrap, and it's another step in connecting every element of the game.
Yeah, it adds a lot of value to items that may not have been valuable before that you need to extract with, right?
Exactly.
To get all of the materials and stuff like that. It's levels it up. Yeah, awesome. So looking at all these features together, as well as everything else that we added to the game that we haven't talked about today, how do you see the core experience of the Bornless evolving over the next few months? Like, what's one thing that you hope players feel when they get their hands on not just this update, but the Bornless going into the future?
Server stability.
But
Yeah. Um. I think we're in a really, really good place, and we always have been, in terms of what the game provides, how it's different from other games, what makes what makes the Bornless a game that you want to come play, and I think we're in a really, really good spot for that. Um, Gameplay wise, there's enough to keep you interested. There's enough to keep you busy, um, and over the next few months, we hope to flesh out some of the obviously nuanced stuff. And we always have bigger and bigger plans for things we want to add in the future. But I think for the next few months, making sure what's there is tied together really nicely, and that the flow of booting up the game, getting into a match, getting back, doing quests, accepting quests. We want to make sure that it's as tight as possible, and that again, like I mentioned earlier, the first match is just as fun as the 100th match. I think that is a honorable goal.
absolutely, couldn't ask for much more. And finally, it's Q&A time. We've got some questions from our community that we've gathered from our Discord, and we've also had some coming in while we've been live from people in the Discord, but also people from in the chat here on Twitch and YouTube. So, time we answer some of these bad boys. So, first of all, from Punkass Villain, one of our Discord members, did the lore come first, and then we thought of the game to make around it, or did we want to make this sort of FPS, and then the lore came along to sort of flesh out the atmosphere of the game?
Yeah. So the like I mentioned before, when I first came in the beginning of 2022, there was already a story there. It was different than what you see now. That story has evolved over time, but Obi, our fearless leader, as we like to call him, the Bornless was his it was his brainchild before he brought everyone else in on it. It was something that he worked on by himself on first, brought in another developer, and then slowly started to build the team. So there was an idea for an experience, and there was a story there separate. The idea for the experience wasn't anything like what you're seeing today, in terms of the game mode that evolved over time. But the core idea of what the Bornless is was always there from day one. We just evolved and adapted over time. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Next up, Matthew M, another one from our Discord. This is a question I can field. Is there any plan to spread the game into other mediums? So we actually have a comic, or had a comic. It was available for a limited run, but it still exists. We still sort of have it, and that may become available to people again at some point. There's also the source material, the Lesser Key of Solomon, that obviously isn't necessarily attached to us in a literal sense, but in a thematic sense, it is the sort of source material for the game's story. So you can you can have a read of that if you want and see where we got some of the ideas for our demons and stuff like that. There's also the sort of faction of the Order of Solomon, which you may find featured in other properties at some point. And we'd of course love a Netflix show and a theme park, but I think we have a little bit of work to do before we get there. So in short form, yes, that it already is, and we obviously hope to do that in the future if the opportunity arises. Next question, another one from our Discord, Scroll Nick. Do we plan a console release?
Yes. That is something we have started work on. We are focusing, I know everyone's probably tired of this answer. We're focusing on the PC stuff first, obviously. It has a lot of work to go. If it, it has to be stable on PC first before it comes to console. But it is something we've already at least started getting the ball rolling on. No estimated, obviously, dates or time of arrival for that one, but it is on our it's on our list, and it's something we have taken a step towards getting sorted.
Yeah. Next up, there's a lot of questions sort of built into this question, really. But Potato Cat from our Discord says, with future map additions, will those maps add another demon or angel, and new human characters? And also, what are the plans for weapon skins? As we have shown them off in some social media things before, like on TikTok. So we'll do the first one first, about the map additions and new demons, angel, human characters and stuff.
Angels and demons and the character additions aren't necessarily going to be tied to a map. Let me rephrase that. There may be some that are tied to a map, but I wouldn't say with every map has to come a demon and with every demon has to come a map, basically. The game is still early. There's still room for plenty of content, so you can expect to get a demon without a map, and as well as getting a demon with a map. We've got plenty of ideas. We've got lots of creative people on the team, and there's lots of room, like I said, for content. We've been talking about what we want the next map to be. And we already have ideas for what the next demons are. So what order you get those in, I don't know. But we've got some really cool ideas.
Yeah, and then for the second part about weapon skins, mentioning specifically, we've shown off things like the Necronomicon, which I love saying, by the way. So yeah, weapon skins, definitely.
Yeah. Weapon. What is the actual question? I just heard weapon skins.
So what are the plans for weapon skins, basically? We obviously have thought about it because we've shown them off before, but when can players expect to get their hands on them, maybe, or how will we handle them, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say early access is when you should see a proper version, or at least a version of the weapon skin system that you can get your hands on. There are. Does it really count as the fancy hammer? You know what I'm talking about?
I do know about the fancy hammer. Yeah.
Does that count as a skin, or does that technically its own?
I think it has different stats, right, than a regular hammer. Am I mistaken in thinking that?
I don't think the stats are any different than like a regular rare hammer.
Right.
It just looks really freaking cool.
So I guess technically then, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess
technically there is a skin in the game you can get through the secret puzzles we talked about earlier. So that's the kind of the start is getting weapon skins and I guess variants of weapons in through Easter eggs and puzzles. As for equipping skins, the weapon bench itself, I think it's safe to say early access upon early access release or launch would be a time that you can expect to get your hands on at least the first version of it.
Absolutely. And then sort of an attached question, this one from Punkass Villain, about skins, but in the context of character skins. Are we planning on keeping those kind of skins? Well, first of all, are we doing those kind of skins? But also, are we planning on keeping them sort of lore accurate and realistic to the world? Or is everything on the table, all the wacky, silly things that you may see in other games?
Definitely realistic to the world. This is something that we've never really said outright, but you can tell by a lot of the stuff that we've kept in the game is even the stuff that's kind of out there is still very much themed to the world, whether it be the demons or the VFX or the fancy hammer we just talked about. It is you don't want Nicki Minaj in the game, right? That's like that breaks that kind of that story, that
She wasn't
immersion.
around in the 1960s. It's that simple.
Because that is yeah. We we want to tell a story and we want to do it right, and um, keeping things true to what the story is supposed to be is important for us. Um, Now, I don't have any specifics on the extent to which obviously the skins will go because it's something that we'll just continue to make. But you're not gonna see, like I said, Nicki Minaj on Farmouth Island. So
Absolutely. And then,
I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
yeah. Another one from Punkass Villain. He's a questioning man, very curious. Do we have any other games or ideas for games in the pipeline? And would they be in the same universe or unique ones on their own? I have a carefully crafted answer for this one, so I'll field this one. Our team has gained a lot of experience while building the Bornless. A lot of our developers have gained a lot of skill and gotten better at what they do, and we have a lot of ideas for how to use those newly found skills in the future. But for now, that's all I'm saying about it. That's all we're saying about it, is that we have a lot of ideas, we've gotten better as a team, and we're excited to use all of the experience that we've gained on the Bornless on something else as well. But right now, we're working on the Bornless, and we want to make the Bornless the best it can be. So, no news on anything else for now. Next question, before any other questions come in about that. Absurd Nerds from our Discord says, is there a plan to implement in-game reporting of toxic players? This has been something we've been talking about internally a lot because it's an important problem to deal with, so maybe we can comment on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is... So back in the day when we had the 2v2 arena mode, there was we had text chat as well as... Did we have VoIP at the time? I think it might have just been text chat. Because you could see who killed you and who you killed, and you could type in the kind of global chat. And we had ways to report players then, and systems change, things break whenever you update Unreal Engine. So that obviously kind of got lost in the wind. But if you've played in a previous test and you've played, the one yesterday and today, you'll notice that we've already started to take that step. You can see the names of people who are VoIPing. Those names are tracked in the logs of the match via the server. That allows people to have recordings to report players. At the moment, it's still stuff where you'd have to report in the Discord, and we can do something about it because we're just doing playtest. But the goal is 100% to have ways to easily and effectively report and communicate the things that are going on in the match, whether it be text or voice or XYZ thing. Gamers are creative nowadays with how they're toxic. So making sure we cover our bases is something we aim to do and is important. Especially as the community grows and the player base itself grows.
absolutely. Verbal Hero, one of our partners, shout out to them, asks a question about vehicle collision, because they noticed that the truck no longer stops dead when hitting NPCs, which is great. But they had a question about the motorcycle. Will you get thrown from the motorcycle if you crash too hard? I'm thinking, like, what happens when you crash in GTA and you go flying? Are we going to see a similar kind of system?
Yeah. Just being completely transparent, it's not something we've thought about. It is something we will probably figure out what feels good when we get the motorcycle and such properly working. At the moment, if you just hit, you just stop dead at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot to do and to make in the game. So it'll be something we work on, like I said, over time. But I don't have an answer for that one until we get to that point and we see what feels good.
Absolutely. And then we've got a series of questions from Discord user Catweasel, very active in our Discord, and they're very active in asking questions for the town hall as well. So we've got a couple of them to rapid fire off from Catweasel. Will we have stealth weapons that can kill at range, something like a bow or a crossbow? I've actually seen that asked by Morgan, another one of our partners in the Twitch chat today as well. Bows and crossbows?
Yeah. So a crossbow has always been something we've wanted to do. That's like a classic demon hunting weapon. It's been something we've talked about since Two Rivers days, which is 2 years ago now. That does mean you need physics-based projectiles, and with servers, obviously we already have server issues. So making sure that when we do implement it, it's something that is smooth, reliable, feels good to shoot, doesn't feel like if you get shot by it, it doesn't feel really janky or like I very clearly didn't get hit by it kind of thing. All of our weapons are hit scan. We've talked about this before. So it is it's not currently built into our existing weapon system to have projectiles. Not proper ones, at least. Like we do have projectiles, like the tracers on the bullets you see, but they don't. They go where you shoot, obviously, but they're not meant to be hit detection objects. They're more just kind of visual elements layered onto existing systems. I personally, not saying this is like gonna be in the game. Obviously, this is just something from when I was playing last night. I was sneaking around with a buddy and we were playing, and I really, 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 really wanted like a suppressed revolver so I could shoot the Watcher in the sky without getting like exposing my position. I just wanted to shoot the Watcher, and I didn't have anything suppressed, and there was like two teams in the cornfield, and I knew if I shot I was going to give away my position, so I just had to wait it out. And I know I personally would have loved a suppressed revolver to take care of stuff like that.
Sure. I mean, that was actually Catwheels' next question about weapons with suppressors. So something that would be cool, not something we've thought about so far, but Brandon likes the idea, and that goes a long way.
I like the idea, I'm telling you.
A couple of other sort of questions, but also sort of suggestions about maybe having the ability to lie down to hide and go prone. What do we think about that idea?
Obviously, the game is still in development and anything could happen, but I can mostly promise that probably will not be a thing. Crouching is about as low as you're gonna go. You're gonna lose limbo if you expect to lay down. I'll just say that.
Yeah, there's a lot of grass.
There's a lot of grass.
There's a lot of grass. If you can lie down, then it might be quite too difficult to find people, I think, at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was about hanging out of the car to shoot from the car. Especially maybe if you're in the passenger seat, and maybe something especially relevant with the motorbike, because you could,
Mm-hmm.
pistol it up while on the motorbike.
Yeah.
How do we feel about that?
That is something that we have 100% talked about internally before. We've said multiple times it would feel really good and be really cool if you could, as the passenger, hang out of the truck and shoot. Um, Actually, the reason you can get on the truck bed was because we identified that really early on, and it's not nearly as straightforward as you would think to make a system like that. And that's why we have the ability to jump in the truck bed and shoot off the back of it, because we wanted a player to still be able to attack or defend themselves, especially when like a demon's chasing them and you could shoot off the back of the truck. It feels awesome. Um, so that was basically a simple early um, not placeholder, but it was made in lieu of being able to hang out of the truck window and shoot, and it just kind of stuck since then. It's easy to do, it's accessible, um, it's easy to get in and out of, reliable. So it's that's kind of what we have for now instead of the hanging off the back. But it is 100% something we've discussed and like the idea of internally. But
Hmm.
we're a really small team, and there's only so many development resources to go around at one time.
Another suggestion from Cat Weasel about match timer or game progression being something that has a sort of visible environmental clue. For
Mhm.
example, right now we have it where when the match hits end game, the sky goes red and all of that kind of stuff. They thought, is it an idea we've thought about sort of making that a more gradual process throughout the map, whereas maybe when there's more sigils that become available, more demons have been summoned at gates and stuff like that. Will we get
Yeah.
a more gradual change into that end game feeling?
Uh yeah, so it is something we've discussed briefly. And I'll tell you what we talked about, and then I'll give you the not so much an answer, but the kind of the conclusion we came to at that moment in time. Not that it's a definitive answer, but we have talked about it. Could be because someone else, it may have been you, honestly. But a few months ago, I think it was around Next Fest, someone asked about the same thing, having it more gradual over time, and the whole idea of getting three sigils is that the island itself is coming alive during this ritual, and that instead of you players just fighting on an island, the island is supposed to feel like a part of the ritual itself. And if you remember, or if you played back in Next Fest, you'll remember that the demons themselves had a teleport, and when you teleported, there were these big like storm clouds that would follow them. And even before that, before there was a teleport, you could literally move around as a storm cloud in the sky. That has always been something that was meant to be a part of the ritual, is that this island is growing temperamental, that it's coming alive. And the issue with that, and the reason why it is the way it is at the moment, is when it comes to UX, so user experience and the design of a game, a player needs to be aware of the state that, whether it's the match or themselves, they need to be aware of the state of the game at any given moment. And if you were to make the sky, for example, get orange over time, you might be confused or not know when the end game itself has actually ended. And you can add as many sounds or UI pop ups on the screen as you want. Um, there is nothing as obvious as the entire sky turning orange in
Yeah.
a flash of a second. Like, the end game is there. You'd be honestly, if you knew how many times we added a UI prompt or a message on screen and nobody, including the devs themselves, realize it's there or just miss it, is just ungodly. So the reason at the moment it doesn't change gradually over time is because when it does go into the end game, we want to make sure that players absolutely 100% know it is time to get off the island. So that is why it changes orange in a split second, because it's the biggest notification a player can have of, oh, game's over. Let's get out of
Yeah,
here.
yeah. It's time to go.
Exactly.
And the last one from Catweasel's series of questions: will ground enemies get ranged attacks too? And before you answer, Brandon, I want to say, why are you asking those kind of questions, Catweasel? The island's dangerous enough as it is. We don't.
You want it to be harder?
Yeah, what the hell? You know
Um,
what the hell?
yeah, to answer the question quickly, we when we first implemented the cultists, we made them base classes of the primary core Bornless character class in the instance that we wanted them to have guns, and we left them as melee for balance purposes. We have on a couple of different times mentioned internally, um, should we give cultists guns? Should we, put the time into making the system work so that cultists can shoot? And the answer was basically no, not right now. There's more important things to focus on. And then we started introducing the Shoggoths, and the Shoggoths have the ranged, right? The Watcher can shoot you from a distance. Even the demons themselves, like the AI demons, have some range. So at the moment, there's no plan to give them range, but it's something we've talked about multiple times. May happen, but I wouldn't count on it at this moment, at least for the near future, up to early access. I wouldn't count on it.
For sure. Hog in the chat asked an important question about something we've actually spoken about on a town hall previously. Are there still plans for spellcrafting? I think the answer is yes, but maybe we
Yes.
can talk about,
Yeah.
maybe why it's not in this demo yet, or something like that.
This one always is I don't want to say a letdown for me, because that kind of implies like disappointment, and that's definitely, I'm not disappointed by any means with where the game is at. I When I first joined the team again back in 2022, I was the one who convinced us to try spells in the first place. I made the first spell it was the bubble shield, and we were eventually going to add them either way, but I was the one who kind of like took the step and was like, hey, let's here's the bubble shield, let's put it in. And it worked out. It changed the game significantly. Different types of gameplay started happening, different strategies, and it was really fun. And over time, we added a couple more, and then after the 2v2 mode, when we started getting into the new game mode, all of our systems changed. The game mode you're seeing now, we basically wrote the game from scratch, like player character from scratch, or rather starting like way over, like the gun system, like everything was different. And when we did that, obviously we lost the code for the spells just didn't work anymore. And it's been something where we're always like, yeah, we'll add it back. The honest answer is that at the moment, there's more important elements to the game to get done, and the spells themselves, while they will change combat significantly when they come back, they're if there's like a priority list right here of like everything that needs to be done up to early access is above this bar, the spells are like right here. They're like, we want to do them, but there's other things that have to get done, and the spells are something we can add in a future update once early access is released, and it won't affect anything else in development, basically. So just based off of development resources and timelines, they're like barely squeaking under the bar, and it's something we know, like I said, will change the game, like strategies significantly when it does come in. But we want to make sure the game loop itself works beforehand. I'm excited for the spell crafting. I really wanted to come back, or to come into the game. I miss the spells, man. I miss them.
They're a lot of fun. And they're very cool aesthetically as well. They had a whole sort of aesthetic coolness as well. Another question, Drummer Chick got one in just as we're nearing the end here. What are the chances that the tier 3 demons will get the teleport back, but change the balance to still help players extracting? Because that was sort of a big part of the tier 3 experience in the previous demo and tests, stuff like that. And we've obviously changed how that works.
Yeah. I'll start with why we changed it to give context, because I know some people, having played the previous test and then coming into this one and seeing how different the end game itself is in terms of the demons. The tier 3 demons always felt powerful for the person who's playing them, but they didn't feel useful, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, you could kill the players, but there was like, you teleport, you run to a dock, either you kill the people because you're invincible, or you talk in VoIP and they convince you to let them live, and they walk away. It created a experience that was not dynamic. It was not it wasn't something that could evolve over time. It was very flat, and a lot of the times for the people who became tier 3 demons, which were usually the sweats, are also the people who don't tend to VoIP. And so for the humans that were at the docks, their one chance of escaping is to use VoIP, and the majority of the time the people who were tier 3 demons don't VoIP. So it kind of was like a break in the loop just because of the type of players. And we wanted to facilitate a game mode that even if you didn't get the sigils, you still felt like you had a fighting chance of escaping and getting out while it's still being dangerous. So the intended loop is that you call the boat, you still wait the 60 to 70 seconds, the minute, whatever, and you're fighting waves of AI at the time. And so there's still that pressure of enemies that you have to fight, but it's not the invincible tier 3 demon who's just going to run to the dock and kill you immediately. The most important part of becoming the tier 3 design-wise was the reward for becoming a tier 3, and that was the guaranteed extract. So as soon as you transformed, your loot was safe. And we kept that for those of you that have become tier 3 yesterday and today. You get a free extract. So one sec. My throat. You get a free extract when you collect all 3 sigils. So you still get that guaranteed loot, and the humans still have a chance to get out. We have gotten the feedback, and we've realized ourselves that after testing, it's not as... You don't really feel the power surge that you used to when you became a tier 3. And the tension is not quite as high for the humans, but it's a more consistent experience that allows players agency, which means that they can make the choices that they want to make, and the game allows that. And yeah, that's where we're at now. It's not a final version. There's still some tweaks to do. But overall, you'll see more consistent and reliable end games that don't feel as punishing for those that, whether you just fell behind in the game loop or you're just not a shooter. Those people who are getting the tier 3s, a lot of the times they're just cracked. They're just cracked.
Absolutely. And then the last question we'll field today from Bornless Architect in our server, aka Toby. When will we get another map to play? He's putting you on the hot seat there.
I don't know, Toby, when are you going to make it?
Yeah!
When are you going to
make it? Uno reverse.
For those of you that don't know, I just want to give a massive shout out to Toby. The island updates, I know I've heard several community members speak on the fact that it feels like an entire new map in just 3 months. That's Toby's doing. Obviously, it's a team effort. And we've got Isadora, Fred working on textures. I did, a lot of the 3D models. But Toby put dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds of hours into getting the map to where it's at now, and it's paid off. It looks phenomenal. I know he needs a break. So whenever you get that break, Toby, we'll start the next map. I promise.
And he needs to eat. He needs to eat. Stop to eat, Toby.
Yeah.
If you haven't eaten today, this is your telling off. This is me wagging my finger at you and telling you to eat. Right. Thank you all for watching. It's always really fun to talk about the game and talk about the stuff we're working on. It's super awesome. And just again, if you're here and you weren't here at the start, look at the dates above our heads to get the right direction. Up here, October 29th to November 3rd, there will be a freely accessible demo on Steam for Screamfest. You can download the game. You can tell your friends to download the game. No keys required. Get in and play and have a great time. We really recommend you do so. We think the game's great. We're not biased at all. You should have fun and have a good time. And to everybody who's joining us in the chat, asking questions, stuff like that, thank you for joining us. And it's time to go back to the island. The playtest is still on for this weekend for another, hour and a half. So if you've got a fast internet connection, join our Discord, get some keys, and get in. Ready for Screamfest demo. And if you are in this weekend, for those that don't know, a lot of your loot will carry over, so you can stockpile on some heavy weaponry, some stockpile your arsenal ready for the demo and get out there and use it against some other players. So yeah, if you have the time,
Loot and Seekers.
Get Loot and Seekers. Yeah, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you out there. Stay unholy, everybody. Bye bye.
Hey.